Morning, folks. It's Monday morning. I was gonna do this a little later, and I might elaborate on this later on today. I'm not exactly sure yet, but I got a busy day ahead, so I'm just gonna go ahead and talk to y'all about what's been on my mind. Um, Probably the last day or so. Not exactly sure. It's just weird how things come to your memory, and just thinking back on your life and things you've seen, things you've heard, things you've watched, people you've met, people you've come in contact with, uh, just uh, just in general, and how sometimes it kind of all connects. Whether at the time when you're seeing these things, watching, observing, dealing with things, whatever, just living life, you're not seeing any connections at the time, especially when you're younger, especially when you're either a child or a teenager or someone like in your early 20s or whatever. You're not connecting dots. You're not putting things together. You're not you're just living life. You just, even if weird things happen that you can't explain, you don't really dwell on it, focus on it too much. You just say, "Oh, that's weird," and you just go on. You don't really study it or research it. At least I didn't. Not in my early 20s, and probably not even my 30s. Really. I mean, I just figured, oh, that's just life. And it's like, oh, that's weird. It's strange. It's different, but you just continue on. You just keep going, right? At least that's the way it's been in with me in my life. But as you get older, hopefully a little wiser, maybe a little smarter, you you kind of start to put some things together, connect the dots. Like, this doesn't exactly make sense. I mean, I can't put my finger on it, but this is weird. It's just not adding up the way it should. And so I started thinking about a few things, and um, before I get to the stuff that is more personal, I mean, not too personal, but just the things that were kind of important to me, whether they should or shouldn't have been in my early life, that is leading me to do this video now. Let me tell you all about three things that I discovered just through simple research, just through simple, oh, how do I say it? Just by looking into some things. I'm going to give you three Bible verses, and people can look into them further themselves if they choose to or not. But I felt led in my heart to just check out, do a quick study, not like anything deep, just a quick study on the word deception. And I'm uh, I'm probably going to call this video "Game of Death," and that'll explain in a few more minutes. Like, oh, wow, that sounds ominous. That sounds dark. I'll explain. Okay, it'll make sense soon. But I did a not like a deep dive or anything like that. I just looked up verses on deception, and three came to mind, or three is what I discovered. There's tons more, I'm sure, but these three is what made the most sense to me, and kind of spoke to me more, I guess you could say. Was First was Matthew 24:24 in Jesus' own words about deception. Then it was Second Thessalonians 2:11, and then it was Revelation 18:23. And all three of those verses have to do with deception, being deceived, or you know, how people can be deceived, kind of thing. And I always thought, you know, when when especially in like Matthew 24, I always thought that the deception that would come, the great delusion, and it still may very well be. I'm sure it is, as a matter of fact, but that Jesus warned about, I always thought it had something to do with something really, really major, like AI, or a fake alien invasion, or a fake rapture, or some. When I first started to learn about Project Bluebeam and holograms in the sky and stuff like that. I always thought it had to do with that. And I'm sure it will. I mean, I have no doubt that I'm sure it will. That will be even more of a deceptive thing that people will fall for. But it could be much simpler. And it appears that it is much simpler. Because when you look at what recently happened on September 10th, I mean, I, I just did not expect the aftermath to be to the point that it is. I mean, you got vigils and you've got, you know, days of national mourning, and you've got, like I said before, flags at half mast, and you've got apparently the Kirk Act that's going to be invoked, or at least presented, possibly invoked, and you've got, uh, you've got, uh, I guess, a mass uh, funeral. I guess, coming up. I think September 21st is the date that I heard. Uh, I mean, and I just, uh, and I'm just thinking to myself, wow, it's like, it's almost like a head of state passed or something, or a, you know, somebody that's like, I don't know, uh, I don't know. It's just weird to me, like somebody that has a major title. Let's just put it, because we always put importance on titles in our society. You know, there were such and such, colonel this, general this, president this, CEO this. Titles are always very important in our society, whether they should be or not. But they just are. Retired such and such colonel, general, admiral, or current general, admiral, whoever. So I'm just thinking to myself, wow. I mean, and then of course we've seen the riots and the protests and heard about those things. Hasn't been as horrible as it could be, but bad enough, I would say. People hating each other and attacking each other verbally and physically and whatnot in certain areas. And then you have, just like these memorials, just constant memorials, and then whether true or fake, supposedly songs and memorials by Adele. That might be a deep fake thing, kind of thing, but I don't know. Just it's just weird to me. It's just very weird to me. And it's just like, wow, could you imagine if every person that died got this kind of, I don't know, attention? I don't know how else to say it. Got this kind of, it's just like, could you imagine? I mean, that's not possible, of course, because and it's like, you're not important enough to get that kind of attention. It's like, only a few people are important enough to get this kind of attention, and to divide a nation, and to to make people want to hate and hurt each other. It's like, there's only a few people out there that are important enough for that. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Yeah, I suppose. I don't know, just spitballing here, But then I don't catch all the comments on my videos. So there's no way. Some of them are hidden. Some people find things that I do. Some people find things, or that I don't. Excuse me. And so I got sent this screenshot, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And this is some food for thought here. Apparently, someone had commented on my video or somebody else's video. I think it was, I think the person that sent this to me, I think it was from their own video or whatever, but they said it was mine. But it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. What matters is the comment itself. And then I'm looking at this thing, and and the person that sent this to me, their response was perfect. Matter of fact, I said boom, with like a, explosion, and the word boom was, how is it that we have heard for I don't know how many years now, fake news, that's fake news, this is fake news, that's fake news, everything's fake news, and you can't trust the media lies, the media is not true, the media spins this, they do that, they have their narrative, they have their agenda. But how is it that exact same media that everybody says lies, unless it's faux news or Fox News or whatever. But it's all the same. It's all, whatever, you know. But how is it that the people, the same exact people that say that this media never tells you the truth, they always lie, they never give you the truth, how is it that that is the exact same media that's trusted and believed over this 9/10 event? Now, isn't that interesting? Nobody wants to question the narrative or the agenda or anything regarding this event. All of a sudden, the media put on its truth caps and it's telling everybody the truth. Where before they lied about everything else. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny how fickle people are? It's like when it fits what they want to believe, when it fits their narrative, when it fits what's comfortable for them, what's easier to believe, then the media is telling the truth. But if it's something they don't want to believe or something that's not, that it goes against their narrative or their agenda or doesn't make them, makes them uncomfortable or whatever, then the media is lying. And I'm like, whoa. See, this is the kind of stuff that uh, people just, it just boggles my mind. Let's just put it that way. It's just like people are just weird. They're just weird. And it's like, I was joking with my son a while back, about some things, where maybe this is you in your life. I don't know, but Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, right? The mediators, those that are willing to get in the middle of an issue, of a situation, and make peace between two people or two parties or whatever. That is a very, very hard thing to do. And I know this because it's pretty much been my whole life where people have put me in the middle of disputes, situations, issues. I just call it crap. They put me in the middle of their junk, whether I want to be or not. I've talked to my wife about it. I've told my son about it. I've probably told other friends about it. It's just like, I am not joking. I could literally be minding my own business, sitting on the top of a mountain, and somehow people would find me. Somehow I would get a text message, a phone call, or something where somebody would want to put me in the middle of their dispute. They would want to put me in the middle of their soap opera or whatever it is. I would literally, it happens to me all the time. I'm literally happened to me the other night. I'm getting home. I turn on the football game. I just wanted to watch this game for a few minutes to see how it was going to end, the score, or whatever. I was just curious. And I get a text message putting me right in the middle of something that the person shouldn't have even known about. But sometimes people have big mouths and they can't help but to talk. And I'm thinking to myself, how did you even know about this? You weren't even supposed to know about this. It wasn't like we're trying to keep secrets, but at the same time, not everybody needs to know everything about somebody's life or what's going on. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And I'm just like, how is this my problem? Oh, it's my problem now because you're making it my problem. I get it. But I nipped it in the bud, and I usually do. And I'm just like, no, I'm not going down this rabbit trail. We're not doing this. It's like, no, 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 no. It's just like, I'm leaving it in the Father's hands. I prayed about it. I fasted about it. I've talked to the people in question. I've done my best to impart some wisdom. To try to help the situation. It's like, there comes a time where you just got to step back and you leave it in the Father's hands. And that's what I'm doing. So, anyway, all of that, okay, to say this. And this is what came to me yesterday. I actually posted it. It's just like, believe none of what you see. All right. And I think somebody came up with this quote a long time ago. I just remember who it was. I can't accredit to anybody, and I don't know if it's the exact same quote, but this is just what came to me. Believe none of what you see and only about half of what you hear. Okay? Because that's pretty much the world and society we live in today. And so I'm going to get into some more personal stuff now. if people have even listened this long, okay? And that's why I'm gonna put. I'm not gonna lie. People can call it clickbait and call it whatever they want. But I am gonna put. I am using the title out there to hopefully get people's attention. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't work. I don't know. So, but I gotta watch my time here because I do have an appointment soon. But anyway, when I was a kid, martial arts was a very important part of my life. Me and my brother. I mean, it was the time of the '80s, and it was a pretty big deal. If people remember, there were tons of Chuck Norris movies. Bruce Lee had died in 1973, but his movies were still very, very popular and very, very famous. And like any young boy of that time, you know, I mean, let's say in 1980, I was 10 years old, okay? So, and that's pretty much when it all started. This is when I was around 10, I would say. And then it increased into my teenage years and even my later adult years. But when I was a kid, martial arts was a really, really big deal. And actually, it's kind of more my brother that got me into it, my younger brother that got me into it more than anything else, because he was just always very tough, very aggressive, didn't mind fighting. He didn't pick fights, but if somebody wanted to fight with him, he had no problem. He never backed down. My brother was just he still is. He's just a tough dude. I mean, he's really physically fit. He's built. He's just a tough dude. He's bigger than I am, even though he's my brother. He's taller and he's bigger, And he also he boxes. He's boxed for years. He's a very very good fighter. So not MMA or anything, but from a physical standpoint, if anybody ever saw or met my brother, you'd be like, yeah, this dude's impressive. So anyway, so he kind of got me into it more, you know, and so we really enjoyed. We were younger, so we couldn't watch the Chuck Norris movies or anything for the most part. They were all rated R, except for Lone Wolf McQuade, but all the rest of them for the most part were rated R. There's a few, but the majority. So we knew who he was, but we'd hear people talk about him. We weren't allowed to watch these movies, okay? So same thing with Bruce Lee movies. They were all rated R, but sometimes they come on TV and they'd be edited for television or whatever, and so you could watch things then. But my brother, he used to collect all kinds of martial arts memorabilia, and we'd share a room a lot of times growing up in military family and whatnot, and we put up Bruce Lee posters and not just that, Karate Kid, Rambo, anything that was just like testosterone filled, for young boys, teenage boys. No girl posters. No, mom wouldn't allow that. But I got tons of trouble one time for watching Hot for Teacher video by Van Halen. I thought she was going to kill me. But anyway, just saying. Couldn't have any of that stuff. I get it. I understand. Shouldn't have been doing that. But anyway, he puts up the posters and I was agreed to him and everything. It was just cool. It was a cool way to decorate your room, if you're a guy or whatever. And then later on, and then my dad got us involved in judo when I was like 10 years old. That was my first experience in any kind of martial art. Really didn't enjoy it that much. Wasn't very good at it, but it was a taste, right? And then for years, more sports than martial arts, but still liked, Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris kind of stuff. And it was just real popular at the time. And then, and then, and we would watch like on people might remember this Saturday morning cartoons or whatever. But then after that, you go to more obscure channels, like local channels, and they'd have like martial art movie marathons or whatever, or martial arts Saturday or whatever. And sometimes they were like really cheesy, martial arts type flicks, where you know they were all dubbed and the words didn't match their mouth and all the rest of that stuff. But once in a great while, even though they were dubbed still, but they were just better movies, they would show Bruce Lee movies. All right. And they would show every Bruce Lee movie that he made except for Enter the Dragon. They never showed Enter the Dragon, but they would always show the others, Fist of Fury, Chinese Connection, you know, uh, uh, what was it, Way of the Dragon or Return of the Dragon, and Game of Death. Well, Game of Death was always my favorite, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. Okay, because I watched these movies repeatedly because we liked Bruce Lee. We thought it was just really, really cool as kids, and it got us more involved in martial arts. Well, then when my brother was around 14, excuse me, we were living in San Antonio, and he really wanted to kiss my dad. He's like, Dad, I want to learn martial arts. I want to learn to fight better. I want to learn how to defend myself. And what father could say no? It's like, okay, my son wants to defend themselves. They want to fight. It's a tough world. It's a dangerous world. We're constantly moving. They're constantly going from school to school to school. By the time I graduated high school, I've gotten to 15 different schools. Whether private or public. Most of them were public. 15 by the time I graduated high school. Okay, that's how many schools I had been to. All right, and most of the time we would move. Actually, all the time we would move because the army wouldn't care when they give you dad orders or whatever. They give people orders. It was usually in the middle. It was always in the middle of the school year. So you never got a fresh start. Unless you finished up the year and then you go through the summer and then you go to the same school like it's a junior high school or middle school or whatever, and you could start at that same school the next year because your dad's still assigned to the same post or area or whatever. But, it was always in the middle of the year that we would move. It was never in the summer where we could start fresh. And that's hard, man. Always being the new kid on the block, always being the kid that would, be and especially as a shy kid like myself, I was very shy, and you're always going to the new school, standing up there in front of the class. This is such and such. Welcome to the class. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dead in the locker room now. It's good. Here comes the fight. You got to prove yourself. Always, always, always got to prove yourself. Locker room fights, playground fights, whatever fights. It's like, here we go. It's just the way it was. That's just the way it was growing up. Always fighting, always being the new kid on the block, always being the new kid in the school. Because it was always in the middle of the year that we were moving, and it just sucked. Okay, but my brother took to it a whole lot better because my brother's like, you want to fight me, kind of thing. That's just the way he was, right? So anyway, he's 14, I'm 17, and we're in San Antonio, and my brother does some research, and he finds the actual martial art that Bruce Lee first learned, that there's actually a school in San Antonio for this. And he was amazed, and he's like, Dad, we got to check this out. We got to check this out. I want to learn Kung Fu, And so I really wasn't all that interested at first, but my dad kind of makes a speculation here. Well, if you're going to do this, I want you guys both to do it, kind of thing. And my brother kind of talks me into it because, like I said, I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover. No, I'm joking. No, it's like that's a joke. But no, but I'm like, I don't know about this, man. And my dad and my brother kind of both convinced. Mostly my brother, come on, Ken. Dad won't let me do it if you don't do it, kind of thing. I'm like, all right. Let's check this thing out. It was cool. I'm not gonna lie. When you're learning, because anybody that knows anything about Kung Fu, which probably I would imagine most people probably don't, it's based on a family system, okay? So it goes back. You're not actually blood related to any of these people, but because it's based on a family system and you're all learning the same martial art, you're related in that way. And so our instructor was actually we called him Sifu, which means Kung Fu father, okay? So we go and we check this thing out. And one of the first things, the reason my brother's interested is like, this is the first first martial art Bruce Lee ever learned. And this is fact. People can research it themselves. They want to. If you ever seen what is that movie, Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, or any Bruce Lee documentary, they talk about this. His first instructor was Ip Man, and they even made movies with Donnie. What's his name? Donnie Yen, I think. Anyway, the Ip Man movies, great movies, So anyway, my brother learns about this. He knows about this. He's like, yeah, this is the martial art that Bruce Lee started in before he created his own system, developed his own system, Jeet Kune Do. And it was just like the way of the fighting fist or whatever it's called. I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. He's like, so you take this martial art, you're actually related to Bruce Lee. I was like, wait a minute, that actually makes sense. Because if Ip Man started this thing and Bruce Lee was his student, and you're learning the same martial art as Bruce Lee did, that's pretty cool. Just saying, that's just how we thought as kids, right? So we're studying this martial art, Wing Chun Kung Fu, in San Antonio, and we're learning, and this is a hard martial art to learn. I mean, very hard. And it's not just learning it as far as learning how to fight, defend yourself, but you got to learn history as well. So it's like being in school. You actually got to learn the history of this thing, like how it got started, where it got started, who started it, and you take written tests. You have to study this stuff. And the way you take your written test is in your stance. And you have a horse stance and a goat stance in Kung Fu. Well, Wing Chun uses what's called the goat stance, okay? Where you actually, it's kind of hard to describe without showing it to you, but you actually have to keep your knees very close together, and to make sure, especially a new student, that you don't break the stance, they put a can of nails in between your knees, and you have to hold that can of nails between your knees in your stance. And the reason they call it a goat stance, it's not demonic necessarily, like everything goat Baphomet and everything. No, no, it's because you stand like a goat. That's why they call it that. Okay, so anyway, but when you're taking your test, you stand in your stance, in your goat stance, with the can of nails between your knees, and you're writing with a pencil with the paper against the wall, and that's how you're taking your test. Kung Fu ain't no joke, man. Okay? I mean, we sweated and we were in pain and we hurt and we were sore. And I got in so much trouble one time because I rubbed Big Gay on my legs. Oh, that was a big mistake, because you go into class smelling like Big Gay, because I was sore, I was hurt, I was in pain. But I will tell you this: it was well worth it learning Wing Chun Kung Fu you know. Now, I didn't continue on with it because I joined the Navy and I didn't, find any other schools or whatever. And then as I got older, I learned about the Eastern mysticism and I learned about the religion of it and everything. But the art itself and learning and the self defense itself in and of itself was really, really cool. And we learned a lot of really cool stuff, right? Well, my brother eventually he had to drop out because his grades dropped, and that was the one stipulation my dad had. Other than doing your chores, obey your mom and dad, that kind of thing. But grades were very important, and if you couldn't keep your grades up, you couldn't be in Wing Chun. So it was just that simple. So my brother he dropped out. So originally he was what was called the Dai Sing, the eldest kung fu brother. Well, when my brother couldn't continue because he couldn't keep his grades up, I became Dai Sing. So which was pretty cool, just by attrition, it's just like all of a sudden it's like, cool, man. So any new students that came in, I was like their eldest kung fu brother. And it was really weird because even if they were a lot older than me, I'm a 17-year-old kid. I'm still your eldest kung fu brother because you're just learning this system and you're just starting out. And I'm helping people to learn after a period of time, because it was kind of like show one, do one, teach one kind of thing. You learn quick, not everybody learns as quick as other people, but some people take to it more than others. Some people drop out right away because it's too hard, it's too difficult, they can't handle the pain, they can't handle, they don't have the discipline. I did, because I enjoyed it and I liked it and I learned a lot. And so all of this to say, Bruce Lee was a very big part of this whole thing. It's what got my brother started with it. You can call it idolatry or whatever. I'm not going to lie. But it was, we were young kids. We were teenagers, okay? And we were big Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris fans, martial arts fans and whatnot. So so as time went on, and I left and joined the Navy or whatever, my Sifu would tell me, he was actually Filipino, And he actually taught us some other stuff. He taught us eskrima, which is stick fighting, Filipino stick fighting. So he taught that as well, outside of class. Come in a little earlier and I'll teach you some stick fighting. Stay a little late, I'll teach you some stick fighting. If my dad was cool with it, and a lot of times he was, sometimes he wasn't, depending on the kind of day he had, because we weren't driving at the time. He had to come pick us up, drop us off, whatever, you know. And so it's just like, that was cool. So sometimes he was cool with that. So my Sifu would teach more, you know, because this was his life. He was actually worked for the post office, but he was a short little Filipino dude. You would have thought this guy was an easy pick on the street. I mean, it's just like, oh man, this guy, no way. He would rip you apart in seconds. He was small, he was short, he looked skinny, but man was he tough, and man was he fast, and kind of like Bruce Lee, very small, built, he was very, he had a great physique, but very small, in stature. But nobody messed with Bruce Lee, right? Not unless you wanted to die. So anyway, or wind up in a hospital. So anyway, that was this guy, you know. So really cool. But I joined the Navy. I couldn't continue to do this. This was not going to be my life. I had to do something else with my life. I had to, be a man, grow up, that kind of thing. So but I took what I learned what I took what I learned with me, and I still practiced and everything else. But I couldn't find any other schools, and I didn't know anybody else that knew Wing Chun Kung Fu because it wasn't that popular, well known of a martial art. And a lot of people won't do research; they won't study. Same as today. Shocking, huh? They won't learn about history. They won't learn anything. So most people didn't even know until many years later that Bruce Lee's first martial art was Wing Chun Kung Fu, and his instructor was the great Grandmaster Yip Man, of Wing Chun Kung Fu. Most people, they didn't even know, nor do they care. They just like the movies. They just like Bruce Lee. Everybody wanted to be like Bruce Lee, but they didn't want to understand the history and everything behind it. So I couldn't find any schools. I definitely couldn't find anybody that knew this. So there's nobody to train with. There's nobody to practice with. And nobody to spar with or anything like that. So I thought. But once in a while, depending upon your duty station, depending upon where you're at, whatever else, the subject comes up of what people did in their, before they joined the Navy and what they, there was always, the tough guys, taekwondo and stuff like that, dudes that knew martial arts or whatever, especially on the Marine side of things, and people that would train and martial arts is a big part, combat, big part of being in the military, especially with the Marines and whatnot, and and so you'd talk about this or that, and subjects would come up, and and so one of I was kind of told, like I said, you call it idolatry, whatever else. I'm still very young. I know better, but I'm very young, very naive, and I think that it's kind of my job because I'm told that, to teach other people, so the martial arts doesn't end, so it doesn't, and so I would, if they were interested and if they wanted to know. Well, some people would want to challenge you though. They wouldn't just want to learn; they'd want to challenge you. They want to see, well, how much do you really know? And is your martial art better than mine? And what you learned, is it better than what I learned? And people are arrogant, they're prideful. So one time, it was actually kind of a friend, to be honest with you, but he had studied Taekwondo for years. And this is why I believe that if anybody's going to study martial arts or learn martial arts, or probably not at this point in time, or you want to learn self-defense or anything like that, probably not at this point in time. I think the two greatest are Wing Chun Kung Fu and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My personal opinion. All right, other people agree, disagree, whatever else. That's my personal opinion. Those are the two that I studied the most, and those are the two that I, practiced the most, and I think they are the most effective, personally. So anyway, I actually wound up breaking the dude's wrist. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. But because Wing Chun Kung Fu is so effective, because let's put it this way, if any woman wants to learn martial arts, I've talked about this a long time ago. As a matter of fact, I used to even put up videos on it on my old channel, but it was all taken down. But anyway, and I got made fun of for it and everything else, and that's fine, whatever. I don't care. It was up at one time. People saw it or they didn't. They learned it or they didn't. Whatever. People can they do whatever they want in their life. I don't care. So anyway, but I did. I wound up breaking his wrist because Wing Chun is very effective, and it's actually rape prevention. Same thing with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I think women learn Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Wing Chun Kung Fu. They're going to be unstoppable. Okay, no guy could take advantage of them. Or I hate to say it, but any other kind of sexual assault from any sex. It's disgusting, but that's the world we live in. But anyway, uh, I it was actually first started by a woman, a Chinese woman. First started Wing Chun Kung Fu. She discovered it. Why? Because the women in her village were being sexually assaulted. So she came up with this system. So it actually was discovered. It began by a woman. She created it. So anyway, uh, so the techniques that you learn are very nasty, and as far as hurting people. Um, so you know, so I did not want to break his wrist, but I simply did what I was taught. I responded. I reacted to what he did, and so what happened was, kind of a friend, like I said, but cocky, and he thought Taekwondo was going to be able to was better, and I don't think it was. So anyway, because Wing Chun Kung Fu does not have all the high flashy kicks. You don't even kick below above the waist. It's all crushing, breaking type stuff. Chain punches, stuff like that, deadly stuff. Uh, they would say better to hurt than to maim, better to maim than to kill. Okay, so you were you a Wing Chun practitioner or whatever, you'd have to have a lot of self control. But breaking bones was a part of it, and I didn't mean to, but he threw a reverse punch, and I blocked it with a chopping block, which is called a gansao chopping block, and it's just what I was taught. I maybe could have used a different block, but that's what I did because that's what I was taught for that type of punch that he threw. And so when I blocked it with my wrist on his wrist, and I broke his wrist. And unfortunately for him, I broke it at the point where just below his hand, where it's called a navicular fracture, and it's like a little notch on the just below your hand on the outside or the inside, excuse me, on your thumb side, and there's a lot of blood flow to that area because your radial pulse is right there, and you break that bone, you have to be in a cast for 6 weeks, all the way up to your shoulder. And he's in the Navy. We're both in the Navy, right? So this dude had to wind up in a cast for 6 weeks, all the way above his shoulder, or to his shoulder, excuse me, above his elbow, almost to his shoulder, for 6 weeks, because that's the type of injury that was, because you want to continue to have the blood flow to that area, or else you're going to have serious um, neurovascular problems and muscular or neurovascular problems. We'll put it that way. That's just the type of cast that he had to be in. I felt really, really bad, but at the same time, I did warn him, and I said, "Dude, you don't spar really in Wing Chun Kung Fu. It's fighting. Well, just show me what you got," kind of thing. Like, okay, I felt really bad, but it happens, and you know, and then he had to come up with a lie. I don't know what lie he told, but he would say, "Well, Roberts broke my wrist. I mean, because now I'm in trouble." And it's like, you're not supposed to be doing this. What are you guys doing? You're trying to hurt each other. Da, 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 da. So I don't know what lie he came up with, but all I know is I didn't get in trouble. This is a long time ago, man. This is like 1993, 93, 94, something like that, 93, I think. Anyway, so what's my whole point of all this? Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, the martial arts movies, this and that and everything else. Well, like I said, you know, things are not always as they appear. Things are not always as they seem. People look at my Sifu, at the time as like the easy pick. People look at Bruce Lee. Come on, give me a break. We can crush this guy. No, not so much, right? People even looked at me, in times in my life, and it's like, oh, come on, give me a break. This guy's nothing. And it's just like, yeah, yeah, well, you never judge a book by its cover. And it's not because I'm that great or awesome or tough or anything else. It's just when people are trained and they have self control and they know how to use the training and they are able to defend themselves and defend others, then it's like don't judge a book by its cover. Okay? Well, it goes all the way back to this 10th thing, right? As I said, believe none of what you see, okay, and only half of what you hear. Well, in the movie Game of Death, which was, like I said, was always my favorite, okay, where Bruce Lee in that film, the character, he actually fakes his own death. Now, if you've never seen the movie, I'm going to tell you about this. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I think it would have been his best movie had Bruce Lee lived to complete the film. But he didn't. He died during the filming of Game of Death. Okay? And I think it would have been his best. But anyway, they filmed all the fight scenes first, like they do in action movies or whatever. So he's in all the fight scenes except for one, I think. But the majority of the best fight scenes, he's in that. Okay? But the plot of this film, Game of Death, is you have this character played by Bruce Lee. His name is Billy Lowe, and he's a famous martial arts action star, kind of like the real Bruce Lee at the time, right? But the mob wants a piece of his action. Basically, the mob wants Billy Lowe to pay them protection money, okay? And so he won't do it. He won't compromise. He won't give in to the mob, okay? Because the mob has everybody, under their finger, whether you're an action star, movie star, singer, entertainer, whatever else, you have to pay the mob protection money, okay? That's just how it works. Well, Billy's like, no, the money I earn is mine. My career is mine. My life is mine. I don't want the mob involved in it. Well, they keep threatening him, and they threaten his girlfriend, who is a singer, and they say, well, we can make you rise as a star, we just want a part of the action, basically. We want to be a part of your life where you can, you pay us a certain amount of money for protection, and we'll make sure that you meet the best producers, the best songwriters, the best record producers, whatever, to make you a major star. And that's what they want to do with Billy Lowe, Bruce Lee's character, right? But he won't give in. He won't compromise, right? And so they threaten him over and over again. They threaten his girlfriend and this and that and so forth. And so eventually it comes to the point where they're just like, okay, we're just going to have to kill this guy. He's not going to play ball. So once Billy Lowe's character recognizes and realizes that his life is in serious danger now to where they want to kill him, they actually try to kill him on the movie set where he's making the movie Chinese Connection, also known as Fist of Fury. And, but anyway, Chinese Connection in America, Fist of Fury in Asia. But anyway, and they kill him, they shoot him on the set. And he leads everybody to believe that he's dead, even his girlfriend, because that's how he can protect her, and that's how he can make sure that he can finally get rid of these mob guys, because if everybody believes he's dead and he was killed on the set, then he can actually take them out one by one on his own, which is eventually what he winds up doing, all right, because they all believe he's dead, right? So they shoot him on the set, and he gets the doctors to pronounce him dead and everything else, because he does have some power and authority. He has some a newsman that's willing to go along with it. So they report the lie that Billy Lowe is dead. And it's very interesting because it's almost like Bruce Lee's life in a way. You know, Bruce Lee did not die in a movie set or anything. His mystery has always been kind of a, or his death has always been kind of a mystery. But he did not die in a movie set. But he did die very young age under mysterious circumstances. So anyway, this guy, you know, in the film, he's shot. He leads everybody to believe that he's dead. They even have a funeral for him, open casket. Some people are starting to get this. Other people, if they've listened this long, other people are like, I still don't get it. You will. Open casket to show everybody that it's really him. But his uncle is actually, like I mentioned before, the movie FX, which is free on Tubi. People want to watch it. It's rated R, so use your own discretion. But anyway, his uncle is actually a makeup artist. Billy Lowe's uncle in the movie. So they create a fake Billy Lowe to put in a casket. They put they make it look like it's him, it's his face, open casket funeral. The whole world's grieving this martial arts star who's lost his life, you know, on the set of this movie. Okay? And I really believe it was Bruce Lee's actual funeral procession. I don't know that for sure, but I was always kind of curious about that. I really do believe it was Bruce Lee's actual funeral procession. So the whole world is grieving, and the whole world is mourning this martial arts superstar who dies on the set, who's, you know, of the film. And they make it look like an accident because at the time, at the shooting of the film, you know, at the scene, it's at the very end of the movie Chinese Connection or Fist of Fury, where he runs out and he jumps, you know, toward the police that have their guns out and they're gonna shoot him as he's jumping toward them. And so everybody's got blanks or whatever, but not this one guy, which is very interesting because Bruce Lee's son, Brandon Lee, just a little history here, died on the filming of the set of The Crow, and he actually gets shot for real on the filming of the set of the movie The Crow, where everybody was supposed to have blanks, but supposedly he winds up getting shot and killed somehow by a blank. Another mystery. Who the heck knows, right? Another mystery. My point is, like I said before, we've seen this movie before. We've had these kind of things happen before where it looks so realistic when it's not. Or sometimes people do actually die in situations that are under very mysterious circumstances. Whatever. Bottom line is, he gets shot on the set, okay, and for real, but doesn't die, but leads everybody to believe that he's dead. Even his girlfriend, he doesn't tell anybody. The only people that know is the newsman, Jim Marshall. I don't know why I remember that name, but anyway, the newsman, his friend, and his uncle. Those are the only two people that know that this man is still alive. So in the meanwhile, he starts killing off the mob members, because he's got to get rid of these guys to protect his girlfriend, okay, and to protect the rest of his family or friends. So it's a Bruce Lee movie. He starts killing everybody off, okay? But they call it Game of Death because once the mob really realizes that he's alive, and this is how they do it, because all of a sudden, the way that their guys are getting killed off, and one of them is a martial arts champion himself, and he gets killed in his own locker room, and they're like, who could do this? Who could do this? So they start putting two and two together, like, who is killing these guys off, and how, because he's doing it with his martial arts. He's not doing it by shooting them or stabbing them. He's killing them by using his skills. And they're like, only one man can do this, but he's dead. So what do? They go to the gravesite, they dig it up, they bring the coffin up, they open the casket, they look at the face, and they're like, man, this doesn't look real. Now, from a distance, everybody was convinced because nobody really went that close up to the casket. Okay, there was no family or anything like that. Everybody was convinced he was dead. All right. So when they look at the face, they're like, that doesn't really look all that realistic. And so the guy, the one of the lead mob dudes, he takes his cane and he hits it, and he realizes it's ceramic. It's glass, basically. It's a glass face. It's ceramic. So they fooled the entire world into believing that this guy was dead. And then that's when the mob realizes he's still alive, and he's the one that's killing us off. So they call it a game of death because they set it up to where they hire all these other martial artists. One of them happens to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketball star, who was one of Bruce Lee's students. Excellent, excellent fight. You ever want to just see a really, really cool fight, on film, check out Game of Death, Bruce Lee versus Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Superb. But anyway, because he's a monster, Kareem is like 7'4" or something, and Bruce was like 5'6", 5'7", I think, something like that. I don't remember. But anyway, it's just a great fight. But anyway, they call it Game of Death because he has to go through like this pagoda where he goes through these levels, one level to the next level to the next level, and in each level he faces a martial artist of a different style or whatever, and he has to kill all these guys to get to the next level, to get to finally get to the big boss. And they, unfortunately, the ending of the movie is really bad. I think they don't even know what they were doing. I just like, we just got to end this thing. We don't know how we're going to end it. Bruce died in the filming in the middle of this. I don't even know if they finished the script. I have no idea. The ending's really bad. They just try to they just end it in a very cheesy way. But the martial arts action and the fights, especially the one between him and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, is superb. So he has to kill all these guys off to finally kill off the main mob guy, the boss, and then he can kind of have his life back, you know, but not really because the world still thinks he's dead. So where's he gonna go? What's he gonna do? Is any of this sounding familiar? Is any of it making sense? Is anybody adding it up? Is 2 + 2 equal 4 here, or does it equal 5? I don't know. Or does it equal 33? like a friend told me, 2 + 2 equals 33. I mean seriously. Is any of this making sense? So the bottom line is, and I gotta close this thing out because I gotta get going. The bottom line is, believe none of what you see and only half of what you hear. And then things start to kind of make sense. Okay? So whether the dude is dead, not dead, okay, removed, or whatever else, all right, the bottom line is he's off the world stage. Just like the Billy Lowe character in Game of Death, you know, uh, and that's why it's a game of death is really what it is. They try to kill him, he kills them in the process, lots of people die. It's a game of death because it just is what it is, man. I mean, that's what they want to do. They want to kill people, and that's either it's a real killing, it's a staged killing, it's a whatever killing, but they want to kill people. They want people to believe that people are dead, and the whole world mourns, and the whole world is deceived, and the whole world, the whole it's biblical, man. The whole world will be deceived. The whole world is deceived. Everyone is deceived, because it's a game to these people. It's a game of death. And so, like I said, the bottom line is they're removed from the world stage. You will not see or hear from them again. Okay? Whether alive or dead, you will not see or hear from them again, especially when they finally close this thing out. There's the funeral, there's the burial, there's this, there's that, and they finally close it out. And of course, never let a crisis go to waste. I think it was Rahm Emanuel that said that. And they're not. You've got the Kirk Act, and you've got, whatever else legislation's going to be passed, and whoever else is going to be demonized, and whoever else is going to be, whatever they want to do with this whole thing. They have their sacrificial I'm going to say cow, for lack of a better term. Okay, I don't want to say anything else. But, the bottom line is off the world stage, everybody's convinced, and that's the end of it. Eventually, it'll be the end of it until the next thing comes up that deceives people even more, and then they fall for it and blah blah blah. And like I said, I was suckered by the Ukrainian immigrant train thing. Hey, it's easy to be deceived if people want to be deceived, and if they don't go deeper to find the truth of things. So it's a game of death. To them, it is a game. It is a game of death. And people are hurt by it emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, hurt by the whole thing. But the bottom line is the world stage, like Dabu 77 calls it, the world stage, you know, people are gone from the world stage. And eventually the morning will end, and eventually people will get back with their life, to their life. Move along, citizens. Nothing to see here. Move along, move along. Eventually they will, but some people will take longer than others. Me personally, I'm done with it now. I'm done with it. Done, 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 done. Other people can do deep dives. Other people can research this and do research that and do this and do that, and they can continue on with it and on with it. If it's September 21st or sooner or whatever, and they finally, put the casket in the ground and everything, then it's over, man. Get back to your life. Like I said, I already am. I mean, I got an appointment here coming up soon. I got to go to work. I got to live life. Take care of your family. Take care of your job. Take care of your house. Take care of your yard. Take care of this. Take care of that. Try to find homeless people if you can to, give Bibles to. Can't find any. Where are the homeless people at? Nobody seems to care. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's crazy out there. It's a crazy, crazy world. It's a mad, 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 mad world. So, anyway, move on with your life. That's my suggestion for what it's worth. Take it, leave it, whatever. Just get on with your life and let people do whatever they're going to do. Let them believe whatever they want to believe, and just move on. Like I said, me personally, call me heartless. I mourn over people that I know or know of, or that I know for a fact are really, really being slaughtered like children, and other innocent people that I know for a fact are being slaughtered, like I don't know, just slaughtered like cattle. I mourn over that. That's what I mourn over. But hey, I'm not going to tell people what they should or shouldn't mourn over. That's between you and the Lord. But that's me personally. I mourn over things that I know for a fact that people are in dire, dire straits on their deathbed, or they're in trouble. Those are the people that I mourn over and care about and pray for and whatnot. But people, you do whatever you want. Go on with your lives, people. That's what I'm going to do. All right, I got to go. Y'all have a great day. Be blessed. Bye-bye.